Welcome back to another episode of Frenchie's Forge. In today's episode, we're going to be taking this piece of 1080 steel and we're going to be turning it into a Viking Seax. This will be for the viewer portion of the YouTube knife making challenge of making a Viking inspired weapon. So without further ado, let's get this thing in the forge, get it hot, and let's get to it. So there we go. We got the forging part done and pretty much got it to shape, got it planished. Now we're just going to throw it back into the forge and let it heat up and turn it off and close it up to anneal it. All right, so to bring you guys up to speed, we are now at a stopping point with the hand sanding, beveling, and profiling, and we've got this thing finished out to a 220 grit finish. And what I'm going to do now is we're going to go ahead and throw it into the forge. We're going to run some thermocycling cycles on it, pretty much bring it up to 1600 degrees, let it air cool, then 1400 degrees, bring it out, let it air cool, and then we're going to stop it there, and we're going to bring it back out and remove all of the forge scale back off of this thing. And I think what I'm going to try is to do a hamon down the middle of this blade. I really like the forged finish look on forged blades. You can see the different hammer marks in it pretty much on both sides, and it just gives a really unique look to the blade. And just thought it would be really cool to add the hamon, you know, shooting for something here in the middle. I've done one before with pretty moderate success. Polishing was a bit of a chore, but I was able to do that. And so I'm thinking I might try it again on this and see how it goes. So let's get the forge going, throw it in to do the thermocycling, and then probably won't show any of that, but we'll cut it back on once we have everything hand sanded and we're ready to apply the clay. All right, so we took a little bit of time, wrapped this dude up in some wire, and we have applied the furnace cement and just kind of trying to make it somewhat ununiform, and hopefully that will give us some good activity in the area where we hand sanded. All right, so that was a pretty good success for the most part. Didn't have any huge fireballs or hear any cracks or pings, or I think we got the heat just about right. And it was the very first blade that I've quenched in my new quench tank that I made. So that was a pretty good success. Made this out of an 8x8 metal plate, a 4x4 metal post that I got from work, and then just hooked up a kind of a hinge and a lid system. And yeah, I think it turned out pretty good. And definitely enough room to quench that pretty good sized blade. I only have the 1 burner forge, so I can't do a ton of big blades, but you know, eventually I may end up making my own forge a little bit bigger. All right, well, you can kind of see where the clay was, and hopefully that'll be you know, a good sign of where the hamon might come into play on this thing. Hopefully we'll get some activity when we go to sand it out. All right, so back inside after the quench, and we've got the wire and the clay removed, and this is what we're left with. Looking pretty cool, honestly, just the way it is. But I went ahead and took a file to the edge of this and just removed you know, any of the decarb and a little bit of scale buildup on there. And I've got some testing files here. Let's go with the 60 HRC. And you can tell that that isn't really biting like at all, so that's good. Skates right over. And let's try the 65 HRC. So that's the sound that you want to hear. This blade is definitely good and hard. And what's cool about doing the hamon, or really doing a differential heat treat with the clay protecting the top, is that the top is actually still soft. So the file is definitely digging into the spine where we protected that with the clay. So it's really cool because it provides a lot more flexibility on the top and toughness with a hard edge. And I feel like doing that is just kind of neat because it gives you the best of both in one knife. So anyway, we're going to get this cleaned up, and I'm probably going to temper this since it skated the 65 HRC file. Probably temper it around 400 degrees for a couple hours, pull it back out and test it and see if the 65 will bite. If it... All right, well, thank the good Lord, the weekend is here. It's Saturday morning, and I have been hand sanding for quite some time. I spent a couple hours yesterday hand sanding. I'm about an hour and a half in hand sanding again this morning. What a difference it is in hand sanding a hardened blade versus an annealed blade. Definitely takes twice the time and muscle to get the blade sanded when it's in its hardened state. So anyway, the last clip was pretty much tempering the blade, and I went ahead and did two 2-hour cycles, and I think I've got this blade exactly where I want it. It is skating a 60, and the 65 is biting just a little bit, so I'd say we're somewhere around 62 if I had to guess, which is pretty hard, but you know, that's okay. I kind of like the idea of having a hard edge because we still have the soft spine. So as you can see down here, we've got tons of sandpaper to go through. And the only other step that I did not show was after the temper, we took it back over to the 2x42, and just with the ceramic 120 grit belt, we thinned out the bevels just a tad bit more. I wanted to thin them out almost all the way, but was a little nervous with the quench. I didn't want it to be so thin that it warped. So just kind of the nature of the beast of making a knife this size. You know, you could grind it all super thin once and then just go straight to hand sanding, but then you kind of run the risk of warping during the quench. So you know, this process of getting a hamon on this blade requires multiple rounds at the belt grinder and multiple rounds at the hand sanding station over here. So yeah, tons of fun, but tons of work. I'm gonna keep going at it here, and the next clip will be once this thing is up to 1500 grit. So here's where we're at. 220 grit. Now, with the magic of video editing and tons of time and work, let's check it out at 1500 grit. So there we go, 1500 grit. Definitely is a big difference from 220. You can see the paper towel roll here and the reflection. And yeah, I think I said I started this, well, honestly, I started about 7 o'clock this morning, but it is now, let's see, 4:10 p.m. So that gives you an idea of just how much time goes into hand sanding. Now, I did eat some lunch. I played with my little dude and shot hoops with my other son. Did a few other things in between, but I literally have been hand sanding this blade pretty much all day. So now we're to the point where we're ready to try to get the hamon to come out. The last blade that I did, which was this one here, and you can kind of still see the hamon line on it. Now on this one, I did have it etched pretty good at one point, but it is a blade that I used quite a bit, and so it just kind of wore off. I actually went ahead and re-sanded this one just to see if I could see it, and you really can't all that well. You can kind of pick it up a little bit, but not super great. Looking at the blade here, it's probably hard to get it in the light, the correct light, to be able to see it. You can kind of see it down here. So it looks like it kind of goes here. You can kind of see it there, and then it kind of fades up into this dark forged texture. There might be a couple of swoops down here. It's kind of hard to tell right now exactly where the line's going to be, but for the most part, it looks like some of it at least is going to be in the hand sanded portion. So that's pretty cool. What I'm going to do now is we're going to bring it outside, and I have a lemon. I went and bought a lemon at the store. We're going to crack it open, and we're going to try to polish it using lemon juice. The last one that I did, I used ferric chloride and a lot of kind of rubbing off the oxides in between different ferric dips, and that did work. I want to see how the lemon juice works, so we're going to give that a go. I'll cut it back on when and if we have some activity. So I just got a little bit of juice on there, and we're kind of letting it sit on there and do its thing. Hopefully you can see that all right. It's hard to know what angle to get here in the sunlight. And already just with a couple of passes Can definitely see the lines start to come in a little bit back here, and maybe a couple of wisps up in the front area, so that's pretty cool. Definitely not super distinct, but it is there. I just got done watching a Walter Sorrell's video, and he was kind of doing this same process with lemon juice and trying to bring out a hamon on a Tonto blade that he did. So trying to kind of follow the steps and advice of good old Walter. So I'll just continue to do this. I might run it under some warm water and soap it down after a few minutes, and we'll just continue to repeat that process. I'll cut it back on here after we've done maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 cycles. We'll see where we're at. All right, so after about 3 rounds of doing the lemon juice, this is about where we're at, and you can start to see the shiny area there of the hamon line travel down the blade. So not super noticeable just yet, but we can at least tell that it is starting to appear, which is awesome. So we're going to continue with doing more rounds of the lemon juice and then bringing it back in to clean it off and wash it, and just continue with that a few more times. All right, so after about 10 rounds of the lemon juice and then washing it off and then doing the lemon juice again, I think we've ended up with a pretty decent look. Definitely can see the hamon line. I'll be honest, I was really hoping that it would be more towards the middle of the shiny part. It's still kind of relatively high, more towards the forged area, but it's still noticeable, and I think it just is really cool and adds a little bit extra to this blade. So yeah, I feel like we are at a pretty good stopping point for this episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and learned something. I wish I could have documented more of getting this hamon to come out, but really the only things I did was pretty much the lemon juice. I did try to do a little bit of ferric chloride, just like getting some on a paper towel and rubbing it on, but that really just muddied it up really bad, and pretty much had to start from scratch. So I hand sanded all of it off and started again with the lemon juice. And then the only other step that I really did towards the end was kind of using this stuff here, this Flitz metal polish, and just putting a little tiny bit on a paper towel and running over the bottom portion of the blade, just to kind of help you know, get it to appear a little bit more. So hopefully you guys can see it. It's easy to notice when you're here looking at it in person. Hopefully it's picking it up on the camera somewhat. All right, so that pretty much wraps up this episode, or this part to this build. I hope that you enjoyed watching. Hopefully you got some entertainment or learned something from the video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe for more content. Like I said in the beginning, this is for the entry into the YouTube knife making challenge as a viewer. So I've got exactly 5 days left to get this thing finished up. I started kind of late, but better late than never, I guess. I'll be putting out the second part to this video as soon as I get it done, which will most likely be next weekend. So be sure and be on the lookout for that. The choice for handle material, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. That's really all I'm going to say about it. It's something that I've wanted to do for a while and really haven't had the guts to try it. So It's either going to be epic or it's going to be an epic turd. Hopefully not the latter. So be sure to be on the lookout for that episode to check out how this thing shapes up in the final look of it. I think for now we made a lot of progress in this episode. Got the hamon coming out pretty good, and really just a very cool profile. Nice and thin in the right spots, still a little thick up in this edge. This thing is just going to be a chopping beast. So anyway, appreciate it. That's all from me for now, and we'll catch you in the next one.